Hey guys, it's the Grim Raider here. Quickly before the video starts, I'd like to introduce you guys to Amino Apps, our sponsor for this video. They're basically a really cool app that has hundreds of different communities, and they have a new stories feature. It's a bit like Instagram stories, but much longer, and they stay there for as long as you want. I'll actually be creating stories and videos for them, which will be directly uploaded to my account on Amino App. My first story is already uploaded on the app, and it's a short tutorial of how I make these animations. If you want to have a peek at how I make these animations and maybe get inspired to do your own animations, then please go ahead and check out my story on Amino App. It's the first link in the description box below. I'll be uploading more stories and other content on Amino App, so yeah, follow me there via the first link in the description.
Back in about 2000 or 2001, I was driving by myself from visiting my mum in Colorado back to Arizona. I've always been scared driving at night that there is someone in my backseat that is going to get me. And this might be because of too many scary movies, or because my mum's paranoia rubbed off on me. I was in the army and drove back and forth a lot to visit her. She would get mad at me for sleeping at rest stops or gas stations and tell me that someone was going to kidnap me and kill me one day. But I just didn't want to be bothered with the hassle and expense of a motel most of the time. I digress. So, I'm driving on an empty stretch of highway late at night with no other cars around. I had just entered New Mexico, as I had to drive through this state before entering Arizona. To describe this place, I was on a desolate stretch of highway with hundreds of miles of the New Mexico desert in front of me and hundreds of miles of the Colorado desert behind me. The closest rest stop and gas station is probably around 50 miles on this stretch of road. It was nearly 1 a.m. in the morning, and the quietness of the desert was both eerie and peaceful. I remember thinking that a breakdown here would be the end of me. I drove on, with the quiet whispers of my radio and the desert cacti being all I could hear and see. Suddenly, this red truck comes up behind me, flashing his lights and honking his horn at me frantically and driving way too close behind me. I was thinking to myself that there was something wrong with my car, or maybe they needed help, because why else would he be so insistent on pulling me over? Bear in mind, there was no way that this guy was highway patrol or a police car. So, I pull over. I was in my early 20s and still a bit naive, and I get out of my car. As I'm getting out of my car, the red truck has stopped directly behind me and still flashing his lights and honking his horn. Curious, I walked to about the middle of my car. I planned on going to the back of my car to see what could have been wrong with my car, when it hit me like a ton of bricks. Why is he still honking at me when I'm out of my car and still flashing his lights? That's odd. Then, he slowly gets out of his truck. That's when I knew that something wasn't right. I jumped back in my car and sped off as fast as I could. There was this sudden wave of fear that overwhelmed me, and without even thinking, I was back on the highway and speeding away from this man. The next exit was 45 miles or so away. He followed me the entire time. Finally, I saw the lights of a gas station in the distance. I had to pull over. I had plenty of fuel, but I didn't want to risk breaking down somewhere and being alone with this guy. I sat near the gas station and waited. I didn't get out of the car because I was too terrified he'd get to me before I entered the gas station. Still, no cars anywhere near this place, and there is probably one person working the night shift inside the gas station. I figured the safest place was to remain in the car, and if he got out of his car and approached me, I would speed off and call the police. The man stayed in his truck the entire time, but because of the tinted windows, I couldn't see him. I felt as though he was watching me the whole time. I could feel it, and I was terrified. I did not want to get out of my car. I waited for about an hour when he finally left. After he left, I waited a little longer before continuing my drive back to Arizona. I was paranoid and watchful for any red trucks the entire time. Fast forward to about 2 or 3 years after this night. I'm watching Unsolved Mysteries or some similar type crime show with my husband at the time. He knew about the red truck as we were dating at the time of that incident. And what story pops up? One about a man on that exact stretch of highway with a red truck that used those exact tactics to get a few women to pull over and murdered them. Although I don't remember his facial features from that night, since it was kind of dark, one feature that stood out to me was his bald head. I'm really glad that my gut told me something was wrong that night, and to get back in my car and drive. Stay safe out there, people.